You remember the exact street corner, the exact song, the exact sentence someone said to you years ago in a voice you can still hear perfectly. Your first heartbreak. Everyone has one, and it left something behind that never fully went away. You probably think it just hurt for a while and then faded like a bruise. But the real answer is far stranger. Your first heartbreak didn't just hurt. It rewired the way your brain processes love, risk, and rejection for the rest of your life. Start with what heartbreak actually is, biologically. Anthropologist Helen Fisher, who has spent decades scanning the brains of people in love and people freshly rejected, found something startling. Romantic love lights up the same brain regions as cocaine. The dopamine system, the reward circuitry. Your brain doesn't just enjoy a new relationship. It becomes dependent on it, the same way it becomes dependent on any powerful reward. Which means losing that person isn't just sad. It's withdrawal. Actual, measurable, neurological withdrawal. Fisher's research went further. When she scanned the brains of recently rejected people, she found activity in the same regions associated with physical pain and, more surprisingly, in areas linked to addiction and craving. Not areas linked to sadness. Areas linked to wanting. Your brain, after a breakup, isn't simply grieving. It's craving. It wants another hit of a person it no longer has access to. Now here's the twist. This experience hits differently depending on when it happens. And your first heartbreak usually happens during adolescence, precisely when your brain is at its most unfinished. Neuroscientist Francis Jensen, who studies the developing brain, found that the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for judgment, impulse control, and long-term thinking, isn't fully developed until your mid-20s. Meanwhile, the emotional centers of the brain, the amygdala and the reward system, are already running at full intensity by the time most people experience their first real heartbreak. That's a dangerous combination. Enormous emotional voltage, running through a brain that doesn't yet have the wiring to regulate it. Think about what that means. Adults who go through a breakup have a partially built regulatory system to help them cope. Teenagers going through their first heartbreak do not. They are feeling the full force of romantic loss with almost none of the neurological infrastructure adults rely on to survive it. So that first heartbreak doesn't just get felt more intensely. It gets encoded more permanently. Psychologist Richard Davidson, whose research focuses on emotion and the brain, has shown that adolescence is a critical period for shaping the neural pathways that govern emotional response for decades afterward. Whatever patterns get laid down during that window tend to stick. Your first heartbreak wasn't just an event. It was a training session for your brain, teaching it what love feels like, what loss feels like, and how much it's safe to trust the connection between the two. That is the twist. You didn't just get hurt once. You got a template installed. This explains something that might feel uncomfortably familiar. Long after your first heartbreak, certain situations can trigger a reaction that feels wildly out of proportion to what's actually happening. A slow reply, a canceled plan, a shift in someone's tone, and suddenly your body is flooded with an old, specific dread you can't quite explain. That's not you overreacting to the present. That's your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, pattern matching the current moment against the original wound. It isn't measuring the actual danger in front of you. It's measuring how closely this moment resembles the first time love hurt you. Psychologist Sue Johnson, who developed attachment-focused therapy, found that early emotional wounds create what she calls attachment injuries, moments so significant that the nervous system treats them as data about how relationships work in general, not just data about one specific relationship. Your first heartbreak becomes a hypothesis your brain quietly tests against every relationship that follows. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Not everyone's first heartbreak leaves the same mark. Attachment researcher Philip Shaver, building on decades of attachment theory research, found that how a person was emotionally supported or unsupported during that first heartbreak often shapes whether they approach future relationships with basic trust or persistent guardedness. It isn't the heartbreak itself that determines the long-term effect. It's whether that pain had somewhere safe to go. A first heartbreak met with dismissal, mockery, or silence teaches the nervous system something very different than one met with steady, patient support. This reframes the whole experience. Your first heartbreak wasn't a flaw in your emotional system. It was your emotional system doing exactly what it evolved to do, learning as fast and as permanently as possible from an event that, to a developing brain felt existential. Because that's the deeper truth here. To a teenager's still forming brain, first love isn't a small thing. It often feels like the entire world. So when it ends, the brain doesn't file it away as a minor disappointment. It files it as critical survival information. This is what loss feels like. Remember this. Prepare for it happening again. You can probably still feel the outline of that first heartbreak somewhere in your chest, even now, even if you can barely remember the person's face. That's not weakness. That's neurological architecture, built during the single most sensitive emotional window of your life, still quietly running in the background of every relationship you've had since. The next time an old song catches you off guard, or a specific kind of silence from someone makes your stomach drop for no obvious reason, try not to dismiss it as an overreaction. That response has history. It was built a long time ago, in a version of you who didn't yet have the tools to survive it any other way, and who did the only thing a developing brain can do with a wound that large. It remembered. You remember the exact street corner, the exact song, and now you understand exactly why that memory never fully faded. It isn't nostalgia. It's the moment your brain first learned what love could cost and decided, quietly, permanently, to never forget it.